Okay, keep going.
Okay,
So you went to work for CNS
went to work
Produce.
for CNS Produce Company, and I worked for them till I was 17. And then two of my buddies conned me into joining the Army. So I wanted to join the Navy. They wanted to join the Army. We signed up on a buddy system where we'd all three serve together all through our time.
Right.
And we went to San Francisco and got our physical, and they put us on a train to Fort Ord. And we got in the training depot at Fort Ord, and on the second day, one of the guys disappeared. Bernal Yoder. We didn't find out what happened to him for 2 years. But his father was an optometrist, and in the summertime he used to grind lenses for glasses for his father. So the Army found out about this, so they took him to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri to grind lenses for glasses. So there went our buddy system. So Eddie and I, they took us over to the 63rd Infantry Regiment to be for infantry training. And when we graduated from infantry training, why, Eddie, my other guy, he was, Eddie Wyan, why, he was in the hospital with a viral pneumonia in his lungs. So they sent me to cook school. They offered me 3 schools: leadership school, automotive maintenance, and cook school. I chose automotive maintenance, and they sent me to cook school.
So you went to basic training at Fort Ord?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I graduated from the cook school, half the class was sent to Germany and the other half was sent to Korea. I was in a half sent to Korea. And I wound up in the 822nd Engineer Aviation Battalion at K2 Airfield. And it was an Army engineer unit.
So this is in Korea. So this
It
is
was
where you're
in Korea,
Okay.
yeah. And got there, and they told us there was 4 of us that graduated from cook school that were sent to this unit. And they told us they didn't need cooks right then, that they needed them earlier on. So they just took truck drivers and guys from the construction platoon and made cooks out of them, you know. And they wouldn't give up their jobs.
Right.
That was the only place that was warm.
Inside and warm, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Cook's tent. So I looked around at the mud and the snow on the ground and said I didn't want to be a truck driver. So they put me in the construction platoon. So I worked on that construction platoon. First job I went out on, well, this unit in World War II had been an all-black unit, and they were integrating it, so most of the guys were black. The first job I went out on, I was sent out on runway lighting, and the guy in charge was Robert Johnson. He was a big, tall, strong black guy. And Robert started asking me questions, like where I was from, you know. So I told him Sacramento, California, you know. He says, what kind of school did you go to? I told him I went to Fruit Ridge. Gotta sneeze. Fruit Ridge Grammar School. And he looked at me and he said, how many black kids in that school? So I had to think about it a minute. I told him there was only one black boy in the school. His name was Rudy, and he had a sister. So I told him there was more black kids when I got into junior high school, you know, but they all went their own way and did their own thing, you know, and there was no problem, you know. And I just figured there wasn't any difference in any of us. We were all just coming off the Depression. Everybody was poor, you know, so there wasn't no difference in us. So I know what Robert Johnson did. He went and told these black guys just to leave me alone. Don't mess with me, because I didn't know anything about black people. And I didn't, you know, really. I bunked in the tent. They put 4 white guys and 4 black guys in the squad tent. So 2 of the guys, black guys there, were Mims and Schofield. And Schofield was a company clerk. And the only prejudiced guy that really was in the outfit, well, it was two white guys. Well, one guy was from Arkansas. They called him Arky. And he found out I was from California, and he used to come up to me and slam me with his elbow and saying, nothing comes from California but hot rods and queers.
Oh, God.
And I don't see any tailpipes on you, you know. So I told him you didn't look close enough. So he used to do this all the time. And he come in the tent one time during the day, and the only people there were Mims and Schofield. And he come up and he slammed me with his elbow and popped his mouth off about hot rods and queers and all from California and all that. So I told him, I says, why don't we go outside and get it on? We have to sooner or later, you know. He grabbed me by the front of my shirt and started yanking me around. I loaded up a right and I brought it right off the floor and I hit him flush on the jaw, just right. He was out before he hit the floor. I jumped down on him and I broke his nose and I broke out a tooth. And then I started trying to knock honks off his face, and Mims and Schofield jumped down and grabbed me. But when they did this, Carlton Greenwood, the guy I went through basic with, come in the door and he seen these 2 black guys grab me. So he jumped over there and slammed their heads together and they fell over on the floor.
Oh, God.
I jumped back on Arky and started pounding on him again, and Carlton Greenwood pulled me off. He realized he made a mistake. He apologized to these guys. Well, they brought him out. He was out cold, and they brought him out. They had to take him to the medics. And when he come out, when I seen him again after that, why, he had 2 black eyes and he was wearing shades. And I told him if he sees me again, he better be smiling or I'm gonna whip his ass worse than I did today, you know. And all the black guys, they laughed. They thought that was really great, you know. So I never had any problem with the other black guys. I figured they were just like I was anyway. But Schofield, we bunked in the same tent for 6 months. He didn't like me at all before I got into the fight with Arky. But after that, he was okay with me.
Well, it's probably because they couldn't lay a hand on the dude and they just wanted to whip his ass all the time.
Yeah.
But you were able to, so
Yeah.
they must have loved you.
Yeah, I was just 18. I just turned 18. But anyways, after we got out of the Army, why, Dot and I were married, and we were sitting there watching TV, and up come the picture of Schofield on the TV screen, you know. And he was Malcolm X's bodyguard. He was shot and killed with him in Chicago. But a lot of things happened in the. When I was just 17, they put me on guard duty the first time, and they took me out and replaced another guard, and I was put on probably the worst spot on the whole company of the whole battalion. Anyways, I had two concertina rolls of barbed wire surrounding the compound, and a lot of sandbags and machine gun emplacements and stuff. Anyways, I got a light shining out, and the sergeant of the guard told me, he says, stand back. They got a light shining out. He says, stay back from the light so they can't see you in an off light. He says, if they see you, you're a perfect target. So they loaded up and they truck 3/4 ton weapons carrier. They went on replacing the guards, and I could hear them slopping the chains in the mud. Anyways, I'm there about 30 minutes, and I heard voices out in the dark. And I became alert and listened to them. Couldn't tell they were in a foreign language. Anyways, this guy come running out of the dark, running straight at me, straight at the light. He was running, slopping in the mud, and I hollered for him to halt 3 times, and he didn't stop. So I put my carbine on my shoulder and was looking right down the gun barrel at him, and he didn't hear me holler halt, so I pulled the bolt back and let the bolt slam forward on my carbine, and he heard that and he stopped, and then he could see me in the off light. He seen he was looking right down the gun barrel, you know. So he stopped and just threw his hands up, and I couldn't pull the trigger. I just hollered, cut a chogie. He turned around and run back the way he came, slopping in the mud, you know. So when the sergeant of the guard come and picked me up, replaced me with another guard, and took me to the guard tents. We all went to the guard tents. And he told me to sit down on this cot, and he'd come back and get me in a minute or two. So he left, and he come back in a few minutes and says, come on. He says, the officer of the day wants to talk to you. So he took me into the tent with the officer of the day. The officer of the day says, what happened while you were out there on guard? I told him. And he told me, he says, next time, pull the trigger. He says, under normal circumstances right now, you'd be a dead man. So I took that in stride. So about 2 weeks later, I was put on guard duty again. And they put me out on what they call the PSP dump, perforated steel plate, that was used to make the runways. The landing strip was all concrete, and then everything off that the planes run on was perforated steel plate. So they took me out there to guard that night, and there were no lights. He walked me around with flashlights, and we walked around and showed me the perimeter, and it was all surrounded by barbed wire. And right next to it was another dump, and it was a JP4 with jet fuel, 50-gallon drums, you know. So we met the guard. He was an Air Force guy, and he had a dog. So anyways, you walk the perimeter and it come down, there was a canal right at the end. And of course the barbed wire fence went down in the water and across anyways, when they left me, I was there in the dark, and I had my carbine and a flashlight. And he told me some of the PSP had come up missing before. So he says, they're getting it somehow, but be careful, be careful. So I thought I heard something, and I popped my carbine up and hit the flashlight, and I was shining right on a face. And I couldn't pull the trigger again. So the guy dropped down and took off running, and I went running after him, and he stopped. I stopped, and he stopped, and I was listening, and I thought I seen something. I wasn't sure, so I up with my carbine, popped the light on again. I was shining right on her face. He dropped down and took off running again. Couldn't pull the trigger. And I followed the footsteps and I went down to the canal. So I didn't have any problem the rest of the time out. When the sergeant of the guard picked me up, he asked me if anything happened. I told him what had happened. And I said I followed the guy in the dark. And I said the footprints looked like he might have went in the canal. I said, could they be taking that stuff out of the canal? He said no.
So do you think this was a
Finished.
like a South Korean person trying to gather
I have no
supplies for
idea.
black
I have
market?
no
Or-
idea what they were.
Okay.
So, anyways, 2 days later, the lieutenant come up to me. There was the officer of the day, and he said, "You know, or you said they went down into thought they went down into the water." He says they sent guys down there to go down in the water and check the fence out, and they had a hole cut in the fence under the water, and they were taking it out through the water. And I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, they thought that was impossible." He says, another thing that happened, he says, the same night, they stole 2 50-gallon drums of diesel out of JP4 from that other guard. And he had a dog. I says, how in the hell did they do that? He says they put down rice mats and rolled the rice mats quietly down into the water, and they floated away. He says, at least you found out on how they were doing it so they could fix it. Next time I was on guard duty, we were working on a pump station on a waterway off the Dongchong River. And that we're working at the water. When the water got high off the Dongchong River, this waterway filled up and it overflowed, and it would overflow to these 2 farmhouses, and it would flood all the way to the north end of the airfield. So we were building a pump station, and they had a big marsh, big tule marsh out there. That shit, it went on for, I don't know, a couple of miles. And when the water got high, they were building the pump station, so when the water got high, they could pump it over into this marsh. And me and this guy named Carson, he was the other white guy that was prejudiced, and we were set up to guard that pump station at night. We were working on it, and they picked us. So every night we were out there all night for over a week. And then they got to where there was so much equipment there they had to leave guards. And it was a couple of miles off the base. But anyways, the hills went up from that marsh, you know, it was all barren and everything. And one night, an electrical storm come in and the lightning was ricocheting across the sky. It wasn't going down, it was just ricocheting. And we were sitting there on our sawhorses smoking a cigarette and looking out. And the lightning flashed and I could see what would look like a line of skirmishers coming off the mountain. When I said a line of skirmishers, they stayed like 5-10 yards apart. In case one of them was shot, that wouldn't take any more than one. But anyways, we watched them. When the lightning struck, they'd be farther down the hill and farther down the hill. Finally, they disappeared into the Tule Marsh. And that Tule Marsh come right up to the levee where we were. So we got to talking and thinking about what the hell would a line of skirmishers be doing out there? There was nothing out there but us, you know. So I told Carson, I said, the only thing they could be doing is coming here to blow the pump station up. So it took a couple of hours for them to get through the Tule marshes, but they were right at the levee there and the pump station was built. They were right in front of us on the Tules. They were about from here to the fence out there. And Carson, he wanted to run away. He wanted to run and try to make it back to base. I told him no. We had to stay here and guard the pump station. It was our job, so. He didn't know what to do, so I knew what to do. I hollered to him, I said, halt. And I hollered my half of the password. They had to holler their half the password back. They didn't. Just got quiet. And we could hear them moving in the Tules. I did that 3 times. And the last time they were about from here to the back fence there. And I says, the only thing we can do is shoot them. So I told them we had 30 round clips in a band, each had a band of 30 round clips. And says, make sure you're on full automatic. And he did. And when they got up to that close, why, we jumped up on the levee and opened up on them, put 60 rounds into them. And then we dropped back. I says, get back into the pump station, the concrete walls and stuff. And I says, we'll get down back to back. And if they come around to get us, why, we'd have a shot at them. And we heard noises for a while, then I got quiet. And we waited and waited and waited. Then out the levee come the work truck coming out for the day. I told Carson, I says, run down to that work truck, stop him, tell the lieutenant what happened. I says, I'll cover you while you run down behind the levee. So he did, stopped the truck. They turned the truck around and the lieutenant whistled to me and motioned for me to come on, you know. So they covered me while I run down the backside of the, and they put me in the cab of the truck and Carson in the back of the truck. And they said, the lieutenant said, don't say nothing. This is secret. He says, just keep it quiet. So they drove us back to the battalion. The lieutenant took us into the mess tent for breakfast and told us to go to our tents and sack out. It was in different tents. So did that. And then I woke up sometime afternoon. And when I opened my eyes, the lieutenant was sitting on the end of my bunk. And I said, how did everything go? He says, just like you said, you know. I said, how many of them did we put down? And he hung his head and closed his eyes for a minute. he said if you put any of them down, they took them with them. I said, well, what happened? He says, our company commander radioed an infantry unit, and they sent an infantry company in to check it out. Well, I knew we put them down, but he just didn't want to let us know, which was a good deal.
So did you guys didn't have a radio at the pump station, did
No.
you?
No, that's one thing we didn't have. We should have.
Yeah.
But when they got up on us, they wouldn't have been able to get out there in time to do any good anyways. So after that, Carson and I never worked together again. They kept us separated. And they told us, absolutely don't talk about it. But the company knew. These guys knew. So a week later, I got called out of morning formation, told to report to the captain's tent. So I did. The captain set me down, and he said we did a good job on guarding the pump station and everything, you know. Of course, he didn't say how many guys we put down or anything. They wanted to keep that quiet. And he slid this little packet across the table to me. Said, open it up. I opened it up, and it was corporal stripes. He says, you've been promoted to corporal, from private E1 to corporal. So he says, go back to your tent, and the houseboy we had for the tent, he says he's used to sewing stripes on stuff. He'll sew the stripes on for me, my uniform. So he did. And I was off all that day, and then come the evening formation, when I walked out and had corporal stripes on, the guys wanted to know, how the hell did you get promoted and we didn't get promoted, you know? And I told him, well, I think the company commander likes me, you know? So, but one other thing, one morning I was called out and told to report on morning formation to report to the chaplain's tent. And only thing I could think of, something bad happened at home. So I got directions and I ran to the chaplain's tent, knocked on the wood door, said, James Way tents, wood floors and wood doors. And the chaplain come to the door and took me in, set me down, asked me if I'd like a hot cup of tea. And I told him, sure, I haven't had any hot tea since I left home. Anyways, the chaplain said to me, what are you doing here? I said, what do you mean? He says, you're too young to be in a combat zone. I told him I didn't even realize I was in a combat zone. I hadn't been shot at yet, you know, this was early on. And what I didn't realize was my birthday. We didn't have Saturdays or Sundays or, you know, anything like that. And he says, you're too young to be in a combat zone. And he slid an envelope over to me, and I opened it up. I still got it. It's a birthday card. And he says, you're too young to be in a combat zone. So I told him, well, there's a difference in me than the other guys. All the rest of the soldiers are draftees. They're all in their mid-20s, you know, or late 20s. And I was just turning 18 that day, you know. I said, in the front of their serial number, they have a US. I said, in front of my serial number, I have an RA, regular Army. And I said, all those rules that apply to the guys that are U.S. don't apply to me. You can't do this to the U.S. guys. Can't do that. Can't do that. Can't do that. None of that applied to me.
Interesting.
So
I did not know that. There was between drafted
yeah,
and joined,
yeah.
enlisted.
So they could do anything they want with me, and I couldn't complain about it. Wouldn't do me any good. You know, I knew that. So he says, you know, he never realized that. He says he knew there was a difference, but he never realized that that was, you know, the way it was. So he kept me long enough that I couldn't go to work that day. Just went back to the tent. It's my 18th birthday. Then,
So you talk about your construction platoon. What did you guys build?
we built the roads. There were no paved roads. Even we didn't build paved roads. It was just gravel, you know. And we built a bridge. We built a pump station. We built an airplane hangar. And that hangar was huge, you know, was 80 feet tall. I don't know how long it was, but they were working on planes in there, you know. But we built that airplane hangar, and one day I was out, they were doing the airplane hangar, and I was working on these big fuel tanks, as big as a house, you know. And I was up top and I was bolting. We had gaskets and was bolting the panels, you know. And I was up on top, and a Jeep pulled up with a lieutenant and a sergeant. And they talked to our lieutenant was running the job there. This job, they cleared off a cemetery to have an area where they built these, you know. That's where I figured out how the Korean funeral mounds were. They buried them sitting upright with their arms crossed, and they put some wood planks down and set them up, and then they covered them with, you know. But anyways, they whistled to me. And I was looking at him and wondering what was going on. And I said, me? He said, yeah, come on down. So I climbed down off the fuel tank. We had ladders. Anyways, I went over there and the guy asked me, he says, are you afraid of heights? I told him, no, not really, you know. So the lieutenant was running us. He says, you go with these guys, you work with these guys from now on. What had happened is they were putting the final braces in the top of that hangar. And on the rig they had, there was 2 ropes. They had a rigger that would hook up to everything. And then the bench, and then they went down to a 3/4 ton truck, and when they wanted to take us up, why they back that truck up and just pull us up in the spot, you know. And I worked on the ground for a couple of days and dragging steel beams around and stuff, you know, and we're cutting them and boring holes in them to put the braces up in the top. But anyways, the reason I was there is when they were pulling the ropes up, this guy named Shorty Brown, black guy, the rope broke on his side, and he fell 40 feet to the pavement. Landed on his feet, but it busted his knees all up and everything. So I was his replacement. So they started me up. We had the tool belts and the spud wrenches and all that stuff, and hooked up so the rope broke, we wouldn't fall anyways. But they pulled us up into the top up to 80 feet high, and we're replacing putting the braces, final braces up. We'd lay the steel across the bench, one guy on each side, and we had spud wrenches, and they'd pull us up, and we'd put the spud wrench in the hole and put it up there and pull it up, and then pull the wrench out and put a bolt in, and then bolted it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I worked through that, and the neat thing about it was the planes, the 58th Fighter Bomber Wing, the planes that go out at night on bombing raids. They were bombing on the Manchurian border, I guess it was. And they come back, and every once in a while want to be shot up or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't get the landing gear down or something. And we'd be up there on the top of that hangar, and we could see the fire trucks and everything pull out and watch these planes crash land, you know. They come down, one that really fascinated me. This pilot come down, and his landing gear wouldn't work. And he come down like this and run the tail end of the plane along the concrete strip. And come on, we were watching the whole thing. We had a bird's eye view from the top. And he come down, and the left wing dropped down. I noticed he had the cab open, you know.
Mm.
The left wing dropped, and the plane started spinning.
Mm.
And that guy was up, and he run down the wing, and he was out there standing there with his arms crossed when the plane stopped moving. It was pretty slick. But we got to witness all kinds of stuff, you know. Then after about 9 months in Korea, they moved us out to Guam. We were gonna extend Anderson Airfield. We didn't know anything about it though. But they took all our equipment that would be useful there on Guam and took it by rail down to Busan and then shipped it to Guam.
And who else?
So anyway,